Yeah.
I think it's still just way less intense right now, and I think they've got a pretty decent hold on it. I think at this point it's more kind of like making sure it doesn't spread that much further.
Yeah. So are members of your crew like fighting that fire currently?
I think there's a few people from our region that are on that fire, but I think right now they've mostly got local resources on that one, just kind of keeping a handle on it.
Okay.
And they're keeping all of us, since we're in a different area, they're keeping us within our local regions to make sure nothing pops off in our area.
Sure. With a fire that big, is the goal essentially to just try to keep it from spreading, or are they trying to like put it out, or how does that work?
Well, a fire like this was an interesting fire because it spread so quickly. I think it grew from like, I think it started sometime at night, and the morning after it was already at like 60 or 70,000 acres.
Oh my god.
And so it was spreading so quickly that we couldn't really stop it. We were like, there's literally nothing we can do to stop it. And so what we were doing for a while is we were literally just letting it burn, but we were pushing it away from structures. So like any like building, any home, we were just trying to protect those and then letting it burn until it got to a less intense state. And I think now it's at so much of a less intense state that they're expecting to have it, if they haven't already. I actually haven't been keeping up on this fire in the past few days, but I think they either have it like stopped from spreading, or it's just spreading a little bit and they're expecting to stop it spreading pretty soon.
Okay. What does pushing a fire entail?
It could be kind of a lot of things. Like, I was there a little while ago and it was starting to go through town actually, and we couldn't like stop it from burning through all the grass that was there, because we simply just didn't have enough resources. But what we were doing is we were kind of going from house to house, and like we'd like look back behind a house and see, oh shit, there are flames pushing towards this house, and then we go and like start digging line frantically and like spraying water on it, and basically just kind of creating this barrier that would stop the fire. And we kind of did that for just a lot of different things, including the welcome to OMAC sign. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much what pushing a fire around those buildings is.
Okay. So it's kind of like creating barriers of dampness that cannot therefore burn.
Yeah, exactly. Or getting rid of all the stuff that will burn all the way down to mineral soil where it's just rocks. And so a fire hopefully wouldn't go across that.
Right. Have you personally witnessed any devastation that's happening specifically to wildlife?
Um, I've seen a lot of displacement. Um, and this is mostly just kind of on a day-to-day thing. I've seen a lot of like deer where there usually aren't deer, some bears where there aren't usually bears, and you can tell they're very displaced. And there have been a couple times where I've seen like old skeletons on fires, but pretty sure those are like old. And I'm sure so many animals have lost their lives. Well, not I'm sure, but I know that they have lost their lives because of the fires, which is so devastating. But I haven't seen that on an eyewitness account, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed there was a post on Nextdoor. Somebody was talking about how they were going to make a trip up to, I forget, somewhere north of where I live, where they were basically just taking in animals that had been displaced, and it was like dogs and cats and livestock and stuff that had basically, just been burned out of their habitats, right? Or, their homes, I guess I should say, and their farms. So I know that's happening too.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of that.
Yeah. Can you tell a story, like maybe I hesitate to say your favorite story, but like give us a story from the front line, like something that happened that was significant.
Oh, well,
It's all significant, obviously, but
yeah, there's kind of a lot to choose from. Yeah, so I'm trying to think of something good here. Oh, so this is funny. We were downtown in this town, and this was this fire I was just talking about that was blowing through, and it's just raging. And we had already responded to a structure fire that morning, so our adrenaline was going crazy. And it was this lumber mill that blew up right in front of us. Well, not actually blew up, but pretty much blew up because it went up in flames, because it was this lumber mill that hadn't been used for 10 years. And so there was just a bunch of sawdust and old dry lumber sitting there.
yeah.
Essentially what happened is this fire turned this lumber mill into an ember factory.
Yeah.
And so it's just shooting all these embers everywhere, and they're all going into town. And we're like, oh my God, this is going to start so many fires. And it did. So we get to this area right by the welcome sign, the big wooden welcome sign. And we see this little thing of smoke with a little bit of flames, smaller than the size of this Jeep. And we're like, oh shit, we should go put that out. We're thinking, okay, we're going to roll out 100 feet of hose, do a little lap around, and it's going to be all good. We roll up to it 20 seconds later, and the thing's got more, it's probably about an acre big already. And so we're like, holy shit, this is spreading so quickly. So we're just like, all right, we're going to do what we can. And so we start, we roll out a bunch of hose, and then I put on this backpack, which is full of hose that's rolled up, basically so that you can have extra hose to deploy once you get further out from the engine.
Right.
And so I get out there, I start spraying all this stuff out, and then I'm like, okay, I've reached the end of this hose, so I get all the hose out of this hose pack. And then I start using that hose, and I set the hose pack down because I'm like, all right, I'll grab this in a minute. And the fire's ripping around this whole area. And then I look at the sign, and I'm like, I'm going to save that sign. And so I spray it down with a little bit of water, and I'm like, that's not going to do shit, because the fire was just going insane. So I keep trying to get these things spreading on the ground. And then eventually, the wind just picked up like crazy, and it was starting to get super hectic, and we had to get out of there. And so we, as quickly as we could, me and my other crew member, we started rolling up our hose. He had his own set of hose going a different way, so I had to roll up all mine. And finally I got back to the engine. It was on the side of a road, so thankfully we were safe, but the fire was just ripping through there. And I remember getting all the hose all the way onto the engine, just thinking, okay, that's finally done. I still feel like I forgot something. And so I looked behind me and this backpack that had hose in it was 30 feet in the air because it got picked up by a fire tornado.
Oh my God.
I'm just looking back and I'm like, okay, we're going to need a new one of those. And then I'm like, okay, well, whatever, lost cause. And then we go, and I think we pushed a fire back from this house or something. And then we come back a few hours later, we pass the sign, and it's still there. I'm like, how in the world did that little bit of water that I put on that actually prevent it from burning? But that was a really kind of a fun bit from the day.
Sure. And
yeah, as
sign for what again?
It's just a welcome to OMAC sign.
Welcome to
just this wooden sign, but it was just kind of a funny little thing that it actually worked and didn't burn.
Yeah. Huh. Dude, what is a fire tornado?
Basically, it is literally a tornado because of the way that tornadoes form, because of the differences in air pressure and air temperature. Those same conditions are actually found in wildfires. And so if you get the right gust of wind, it'll just start forming a tornado. But these tornadoes aren't just picking up the dust that's on the ground. They're picking up all the flames and they're carrying those flames. So you literally have these like 50-foot tall columns of spinning flames. I've seen two of them, and both of them were very close to us. So, and they're warm too. Like you can really feel the heat off them from a ways away.
I can only imagine.
It's, I mean, it's a really, really like cool thing to see, as devastating as it is.
Yeah.
It's just so like otherworldly.
Yeah.
To see something like that.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing, right? Like, fire is not the enemy, right?
Yeah, it's the out.
Your job is to fight these fires, right? But fire, it's a natural thing, you know.
Absolutely.
And being that it is a natural thing, of course it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
I would have to say, at least to some degree, when I was a kid, you know, I was a bit of a pyro. Not as much as whoever blew off that M80 a little while ago, but it is also an awesome force, like many things in nature, right? You know, we learn in school even that you know, certain amount of burning is natural, like forests burn, and then, you know, from that burn comes like amazing life because it just enriches the soil so much.
Yeah.
But it seems that what we've got on our hands now is, I hesitate to say supernatural, but what I mean is like it's beyond what is in balance with nature.
Exactly. It is.
And so the question becomes, why is that happening? You know, certain actions that humans take to upset the balance of nature seem to require human actions to reset the balance, right? So
yeah.
So glad that you are out there doing that, and your crew and all of those people are out there doing that, saving lives, and I hope like they're being well compensated, I hope that they're not getting hurt. Have you seen anybody like sustain like a really bad injury on the job?
In the workforce, thankfully, injuries are pretty rare. Because while it can get very dangerous, it's still, we won't put ourselves into a dangerous situation that we can't get out of.
Okay.
And so, thankfully, while they do occur, injuries and fatalities are pretty rare.
I bet your mom's happy about that.
Yeah, she is.
Does she worry about you? Do they worry about you?
Well, I mean, yes, but she's also my mom, so I think that I think she gets worried if I'm driving to the store to pick something up. So
that's just what moms do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Sometimes it occurs to me, because and that never goes away either, right?
Yeah.
You don't outgrow this sense of wanting your children to be happy and healthy, right?
Oh, totally.
And there are times when I'm driving my car where I'm just like, I have this moment of like imagining my mom at home, like worrying about me. And I'm sure like it happens to this day. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that you guys are being safe and saving us all. So thank you for that.
For sure. I mean, it's kind of funny. The thing I've realized is it's like it's really just kind of another job. It's like I feel like the job I do is not that much more dangerous than a postal worker who has to drive, for 8 hours a day. Because they're also, that's a necessary service, an absolutely necessary service that is quite risky considering how much they drive. And, there's so many other service-based jobs out there that are quite risky. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, I mean, while firefighting is definitely very, very risky and high intensity, it's still just kind of another service job.
Yeah. You've been doing this for 3 years now, you said?
Well, this is my first year. This is actually my first year, like, doing it full time and getting paid for it.
Okay.
I did a little bit of volunteering with a local fire district, but it wasn't really, we didn't really do that much, especially I didn't, because it was my first ever experience with fire. So this is kind of I kind of count this as my first actual season fighting fire.
Okay. But you got to see fires a couple years ago and last summer.
Last summer I actually didn't, because it was a really tame season.
Okay.
And also it was just like the area I was at never really ended up doing much of anything. So
okay.
I ended up not seeing fire last year.
So we got lucky last year.
Yeah.
Now that I remember, it was 2 years ago that I picked up my phone and it said smoke on it.
Yeah.
Not last year. We got lucky. But yeah, so what is it? Why are we seeing? I mean, are the fires worse this year than they've ever been? It feels that way, but is it actually that way? I don't know.
I believe it is, and I think that they get worse and worse every year. I think that's a lot of it's just simply because of climate change.
Yeah.
And we're fucking up our atmosphere, and we're fucking up the things that keep our planet cooler. I mean, obviously, more and more ice is melting off the caps. More and more of these, more and more mountains are getting less snow at higher elevations, and things are just warming up. And a warmer environment is a drier environment, and a drier environment is a better fire environment. So I think that the pattern that we're seeing with seeing more and more wildfires is directly related to climate change.
Yeah, that seems to be the popular opinion in the scientific community, and it makes sense, right? Because it's like, we get lightning all the time, right?
Yeah,
And we get fires all the time, but for some reason lately, like, it's just a lot more. It's not.
yeah,
It's not necessarily even more lightning. It's just a lot more fire.
exactly.
Yeah, and it's because of that. The spreading capabilities of the drier things are, right? It's like,
Exactly. It is.
yeah, I can't help but I keep thinking about the lumber mill that you were talking about, right? And the fact that it went up so fast is because it's all dry, right? It's the perfect environment for fire to happen.
Exactly.
You want to talk a little bit about, one of the reasons that I got inspired to interview you was because, we seem to make this connection in our heads almost at the same time about how, or maybe you were already thinking about it, about how, being that, the overwhelming majority of, by certain estimations, more than half of the carbon dioxide that's being poured into the sky every year comes from animal agriculture. So the very conservative estimate is that more greenhouse gases are created by animal agriculture than all of the world's transportation. That's the most conservative estimate about that phenomenon. And as we know, greenhouse gases are what's causing global warming. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you and I, at least you and I, have made this connection between the choices people are making every day about what they're putting on their plate and these fires, right?
Absolutely.
And the fact that, you being a vegan means that you're fighting the fire before it begins and after it begins. Literally.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. So I would just love to hear any thoughts you have on that particular idea.
I think that, honestly, I think that as far as climate change goes, I think two things in particular. One, that it's extremely important to also note that the top 100 corporations in the world are polluting the earth by like 70. They're committing like 70 to 75% of the pollution. But on the other thing to note is that while personal choice is not the most that can happen, the biggest personal choice that we can do is to stop eating meat, because that almost directly, well, if everybody does it, it does directly affect so many of those top corporations that are polluting.
Yeah.
And so I think that by not contributing to animal agriculture, you're cutting out quite possibly the biggest link between the consumer and the corporation. And within that, I think that that is quite possibly the biggest cause of all of these, all these fires, all this climate change. And I think that if you're going to make a personal choice to make the world less hot and stop fucking up the climate, I think that, while like recycling more and reusing certain things are a great option, I think that by far the biggest thing you can do is stop consuming animal products, because that just takes up so many resources, so much more than anything else.
Yeah, all the evidence seems to be pointing in that direction for sure. And it is everything. It's not like we should stop recycling.
For sure.
It's not like we should stop, it's not like we should start, buying more plastic or something like that.
Yeah.
You got to keep doing all those things too, and drive your electric car and grow your own food. Like, all of these things are important.
Yeah.
But not eating animal products is something that you can do every single day to save the planet.
Yeah, and it makes such a huge impact.
It does. And people will figure this out eventually, and make that choice, make that change.
Yeah, and I'm really, really excited to see more and more of the global population come to that realization and make that shift.
Yeah, me too, man. It's happening.
I think so too.
We are right, and we are winning.
Hell yeah.
And the good thing about vegans winning is that everybody wins.
Everybody wins. Everybody.
Even the people that are still eating meat are going to win because we are vegan.
Yeah, it's still better for the world that they live in.
Yeah. But we're definitely getting to that point where a critical mass is of the essence. We're going to need a lot more, and we're going to need a lot more soon. And I think things like these wildfires and the devastation, the sheer mass of the fires that we've seen this year mean that we all need to start making these personal choices and these personal changes, like, now.
Yeah, we totally do.
Yeah, like, when you're done watching this video, become vegan.
Absolutely. Now's the perfect time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not that hard, right?
Honestly, going vegan, way easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
It's not 100% the easiest thing in the world, but it's
doable.
It's more than doable. It's absolutely achievable.
Yeah. I've seen, so many people in my life make really important choices and really important changes, and do extraordinary things out of sheer will because they knew it was the right thing to do. So this can be another one of those things.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not only, not only is it absolutely doable, but the parts that are difficult are very easily overridden by the will that you get once you begin to keep doing it, because you really feel like it's actually making an impact, and you feel just so good about it that you get this drive that you didn't know you would have before.
Yeah, truly. Yeah. I feel inspired. I have to hang on to this feeling of optimism because it is not always with me, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's the most important thing we can do as vegans is we need to stay optimistic, because that will carry through to how we perceive things, and that will carry on to how we carry our own actions and make impacts in our own lives.
Amen, brother. Yeah. I'm working on it. I'm definitely working on it.
Me too.
Yeah. And being able to have conversations with forward-thinking, intelligent people like you definitely helps. I got some other questions that I want to ask you before I let you go. Do you still have a little bit of time?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, cool. What is your opinion on prescribed burns? Have you heard of this?
I think that prescribed burns, I wish that they were practiced more. Obviously, there is a incredibly long history of native tribes in the Americas, and guessing all over the globe doing these prescribed burns. And it was actually shown to be incredibly healthy for the forests in many different ways, or not just the forest, but just the wildland in general. In one aspect, it kept these larger, fast spreading fires from occurring because they're essentially thinning out the fuel. If you burn a lot of stuff, obviously stuff will grow back, but because it's being burned every once in a while, it's not so thick and not so closely compact. And so in that aspect, it actually helps prevent these massive fires that occur. It's also very good for biodiversity because you have all these, tree saplings on the ground, and you do a prescribed burn through there, you end up burning most of those. But what happens is you end up having some of these trees survive, and they'll grow, and you have a lot of spacing between trees, more than what you usually see in most, if not all, national parks here. And because there's more spacing between trees, there's sunlight getting to the ground that normally wouldn't occur. And you see all this different shrubbery, flowers, ground cover popping up, and different types of trees that are able to grow wider and more healthy. And when you see it, it's really interesting because if you look at a picture of a national park now versus 100 or so years ago, now it's all you see is just green everywhere. It's just so densely packed. But 100 years ago, it was thinned out. Almost because of the way we're conditioned to think, we would think, oh, well, this second, more modern photo is more healthy because you're seeing more trees, when in fact it's actually a very unhealthy ecosystem because there's such a great lack of biodiversity. Whereas in the older photo, it's thinned out as a product of prescribed burns, and in between all these trees is so much ground life and so many smaller trees that you might not be seeing. And it really just goes into the domino effect of there being more ground cover means there's more food to eat for wildlife. So you see more birds, you see more insects, you see more bees. I could go on for a painfully long amount of time about how good prescribed burns are, but I think they're just, I wish they were done more than they are.
Yeah, so again, it's like, fire itself is not the enemy, right?
Exactly.
It's all about a balance, right? You were talking about a national park. I remember reading a story about how, certain populations of certain animals were out of control in that park, and it just, so many different things were like out of whack, and they were like, oh wait, right, there's no wolves here anymore. So they intentionally brought some wolves into that environment, and all of a sudden, like, everything fell back into balance, right?
Yeah.
It's the same idea, the fire and wolves being the parallels in this particular paradigm. Very interesting. So I know that there are apparently some places where they're intending to do these prescribed burns to try to head off some of these larger fires. And so what you're saying is you're for that particular strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's sort of ironic in a way that native communities have been doing this for thousands of years, and it's worked beautifully. The colonizers come in and tell them they can't do shit anymore. They don't have control over their own lands. And one of these things they say they can't be doing anymore is prescribed burns. Come to find out, these prescribed burns were actually incredibly helpful. It's almost as if the people who have been living here for thousands of years actually know how to take care of the land better than the people who came and took it from those people.
Yeah, who would have thought, right? What do you know about the usage of things like magnesium oxide or other chemicals being used to put out fires?
Not as much as I probably should. I do know this could be a totally different thing, but it might be the same thing. We use this, we call it foam. I don't know what it is. It smells kind of like soap, but what it does is it will basically, if you have like a log that's burning, it will burn for a very long time because it's just such a deep and heavy thing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you spray foam onto it, this foam will seep into all those cracks and put out all those embers. That might not be what you're talking about, though, but I'm not super sure.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let's do a quick Google search. What is the foam that firefighters use? Ba-ba-ba. It is, let's see. Firefighting foam was invented by the Russian engineer and chemist Alexander Loren in 1902.
Huh.
It's made out of the surfactants used most produce foam in concentration of less than 1%. Other components of fire retardant foams are organic solvents, trimethylene glycol and hexylene glycol, foam stabilizers, and corrosion inhibitors. Yeah. I don't know.
I have no idea what any of that is.
Yeah. It bears closer examination, I suppose. I remember when I was a kid, actually, near one of the fire stations in my hometown, when we would have this event called a Day in Our Village, and they would like spray a whole bunch of this foam all over the ground, and like the little kids would just go play in it, and I was so I would too. It was a blast. It was like it was kind of magical, you know, like you're waiting around in a misty, you know, area or something.
I have vague childhood memories of doing that same thing.
Yeah.
I think that they may have done something like that in my hometown too.
Yeah. Okay. So other than that, though, you guys just use water.
Yeah, we really rarely use foam.
Yeah.
And then we use water and then tools.
Yeah. I think I remember seeing a couple years, you know, the last big fire fest a couple years ago. They were like dumping sand, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I mean it's definitely kind of you only do it in certain situations, but you know, if there's like I'll actually do it if there's like a small flare up, just like maybe this big or so. I'll just take my tool and I'll just like dig a chunk of dirt and then drop it on top of that flame, and then that just gets rid of all the oxygen, so that'll put it out.
Yeah.
And so I imagine doing that on a large scale, if possible, would work pretty well.
Yeah. You cut off the oxygen and there's no fire.
Yeah.
Cool. I got two more for you.
Go for it.
Actually, no, I might have more than that. Well, we could go through some of these real quick, probably.
As many as you want. I'm in a chatting mood for sure.
Okay, cool. I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, I'm probably going to edit this down dramatically anyway to try to make me sound more cool. I'll go back and ADR all of my moments so I sound intelligent. What are you listening to these days?
Oh, a lot of different things. Especially after quarantine. I've ended up So I ended up going down a bunch of weird rabbit holes of music during quarantine. I guess, yeah, okay, so I gotta tell you about this one, I guess technically group of albums that I listened to. It's called Everything at the End of Time, and it's by The Caretaker.
Whoa.
Oh my God. So it's this collection of albums. The total playtime is about 6.5 hours.
Okay.
And so this guy, it's a collection of 6 albums, and he released them 6 months apart from each other. So we do album 1, go 6 months, album 2, go 6 months, and then keep going till the end. And this album is essentially supposed to be an artistic representation of the experience of dementia. And essentially how it works is he took these old like 1920s, 1930s ballroom music samples, and this first album is essentially just, very like, yeah, it's just these ballroom songs, but it's, he's put some effects onto it. He's done some distorting with the noise. It really does a really good job of encapsulating the feeling of it representing a memory. Like, it feels very nostalgic, and it's so pleasant. It's just really, really nice to listen to. And then the second album is like kind of, it's a little bit harder to figure out the details, but you still know the general picture of what's going on. And the third album, you can tell these songs are kind of deteriorating. Like, they'll skip a bunch, and then it's just harder to hear them sometimes because they're distorted. Then the fourth album hits, and whew, like, it's just a mishmash. Like, it keeps cutting in between these different like songs, and it's like, at this point, it's like you can't even tell what these songs or memories once were. And it's like, I'm doing a pretty shitty job of explaining it, but like, it is devastating. Like, it's just like, it takes such a mental toll. And so about halfway through the fourth album, I had my first panic attack.
Okay.
And then so I make it through. I bear through it, and then the fifth album comes on, and it's even worse. And it's this disgusting, like, just mishmash of just what was once a beautiful, like, song that was a memory is just this, like, horrifying soundscape of just insanity. You can't even, like, oh, the fifth album's the worst part, because, okay, do you mind if I spoil just a little bit of it?
No, go ahead.
So, this is the worst part of the whole thing for me. What'll happen is, it's when all this insanity, you can't, like, it'll switch to a different song every 2 seconds, so you can't pick up anything that's going on. And then about a third of the way into the fifth album, it just stops and goes straight to what the first album sounded like. So it's this super pleasant, like, really light, happy ballroom tune. And it's just this really pretty melody. Goes for about 1 minute and 20 seconds, and so you're like, oh my God, finally something good. And then just right back into this just horrifying soundscape. And that was my second panic attack of this whole experience.
Yeah.
And yeah, so then the fifth album finally got through with that. The sixth and final album, like, it's so deteriorated, it doesn't even sound like songs. It's just this drone. And it's these weird, like, this, like, insane sounding drone-ish noises for like a whole hour, and then it cuts out, and then there's like a couple minutes of silence, and then the last 5 minutes of this entire EP, or not EP, whatever term it is, this entire collection of albums, is like a very like distorted clip of like an Italian church choir singing, and then it's done.
Wow, that's intense. What's the artist again?
The Caretaker.
The Caretaker.
And it was released. I think the last album was released in like summer of 2019.
Okay. What do you know about the Caretaker? Does he know somebody that suffered from dementia? Is he?
Honestly, I don't really know, because he's very low key. He tries to really, like, he doesn't really share a lot about himself with his music. What I do know is that he started this kind of like what I was saying the first album was, he did a lot of stuff like that, this very nostalgic, old-timey music. I think he started in like the mid-90s because he was inspired by the movie The Shining and one of those ballroom scenes.
Oh, and that was like my first thought when you were describing it.
That's exactly where he was inspired. All of his music was inspired by. And yeah, his stuff is really, really cool. But yeah, this album was, I would say, probably the most moving piece of music I've ever listened to.
Oof. Part of me wants to check it out, and part of me is like, I don't know if I want a panic attack.
Yeah, it's well, mind you, I listened to this album. I started at like 10 o'clock at night, so I was like half asleep, and it was about 2 or 3 in the morning by the time I got to that part. So
yeah,
that was kind of my bad.
Yeah, I get it. Are you still taking cold showers?
Not as much as I used to. I used to take them every day.
Yeah.
Now I only take them like once every few weeks, maybe. But on a day-to-day basis, I've kind of moved on to the lukewarm shower.
Okay.
Because it's like, I don't know, it's more kind of, it's really comfortable, actually. Because I don't like hot showers, because they kind of dry out my skin, and I don't like feeling hot in a shower.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like clean enough. But a lukewarm shower just feels very like cleansing. I don't know.
But
it's just a very clean feeling.
But you'll do the cold ones because you feel like you're still getting health benefits from that?
I know. See, the problem was I shouldn't have stopped doing them every day because they suck. But they have so many health benefits, but I don't know if I really do them enough to get the health benefits of them. But sometimes they are kind of nice to wake you up.
Yeah. But
I guess I probably do get some of the health benefits by doing them every once in a while.
So yeah, tell me about the Wowie guitar.
Well, so, God, when was this? Like, probably 6 or 7 years ago. No, can't be that. Probably was. Holy shit. Yeah, so probably about 6 or 7 years ago, my friend and I, who we play music together all the time, and we also kind of had this, both of our minds worked alike in the sense that we like to just brainstorm shit and go with it. And so we had this 2x4 sitting around, and I had some extra pickups laying around my house. And so we're like, what if we like made something out of this? And so what we came up with was we had this 2x4, We used the whole damn thing too, all 6 feet of it. This was a 6-foot long piece of lumber, and we essentially made a tuning bridge or tuning peg. Or no, we actually took a tuning peg off of one of my guitars I was using for scrap pieces and stuck it into this 2x4. And then we basically strung it all the way to the other end of the 2x4. And we made this bridge out of 2 forks and some duct tape. And then under, like, right next to that bridge, we stuck this cheap generic pickup, but it's like intended to be like a very like hot pickup for like metal. And then we strung a bass string. Oh, and then we painted frets along the neck of this thing. This thing is essentially just a neck. That's all it was.
Right.
And then we just put in the rest of the wiring, and it was all held together by duct tape too. I can't believe this thing actually worked. And it was actually really, really fun to play because it was this extreme, it was like lower. I think we actually tuned it to the same tuning as a low E on a bass guitar. Mm. And so, but because it was so much longer than the string on a bass guitar, it just had this like, this insane tone because it was able to just resonate with so much like strength. And it was fretless too, because there were no actual frets on it. So we had this just like this gent machine, I guess. And so we'd play these, we plugged it into this like line 6 amp and just played a bunch of metal on it. And it was hilarious. And it was so much fun. And it actually sounded kind of good. And so we're like, why don't we just make these things? And so we're like, all right, we are Wowie Guitars. And we made a guitar out of, actually we made several 2x4 guitars. We started trying to make one out of a shovel, but that never got finished. And yeah,
Out of a shovel, you said? Yeah,
we were gonna try and do that, but then that just never ended up getting finished. But yeah, that was just sort of we just started kind of building guitars out of anything we could find.
Are there recordings of the metal jams you did with this thing?
Oh yeah, there definitely are. I would just have to find them because they're somewhere. They're somewhere, but I'm just not sure where.
If you dig one of those up, please send it.
Oh, I will, for sure.
I remember you brought one into your lesson at the School of Rock.
That's right, yeah.
And I took a picture of it. And I remember you plugging that thing in, and it was just like, I was trying to wrap my mind around the sound that it was making because it was like kind of like a bass, but something was different.
Yeah. Something was very, very wrong.
Where are these guitars now?
I've got one of them.
You do?
And then a few others are at Emmett's house.
Okay.
And yeah, I think I've got like one or two, and then he's got a few others. They're scattered across the state.
Nice. So yours is at your parents' house where you're at now?
I think so. I may have left it at the house in Seattle. I'm not too sure, to be honest.
Okay. Tell me about squatching.
Oh, well, coming out here for all these times, I've definitely read into the phenomena of Sasquatch, and I think it's super interesting. Like, I've never seen a Sasquatch. I don't know if I've heard one. I may have heard one. I've had a few weird things happen. I've been out in the woods a lot. I know what pretty much every single sound is, and I've heard some shit that I just, to this day, don't know what it was. And upon reading more and more into Sasquatch, it's like, okay, this is really, really interesting, because not only do people these days still have reports of seeing or hearing or having any experience with these, but they also have a very significant part in Native communities' histories. And so it's just a super interesting subject matter to go into, just an awesome rabbit hole. And I've kind of made it a hobby of mine to go out and actually like try and look for Sasquatch, even though like I don't know if they exist or not, but I've had no proof that they don't. And so it's super fun to go out and try and look for them, which involves going out in the woods in the middle of the night and just yelling into the openness and hitting things on trees and then hoping you get something back, which I have once. I'm not, oh, 5 years ago, I was out with my dad actually doing this, and we went to this one spot, and I hit this stick across a tree. It was more of like a log, but it was really loud because I picked a good tree for it. It was like dead, so it was hollow on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
And I just whacked it like 3 times, and like a second later, I heard these two like these 2 knocks. They were like super unison, and it was like coming from really far away, but it was like really loud. Like it sounded like somebody had like taken a huge like log or something and was hitting it against a tree. And I knew for a fact that the area that it was, there were no like hiking trails, there were no campsites. It would have been really weird for somebody to have been out there. And I feel like it would have taken several people to be able to make that noise. So it could have been that people just happened to be out there, or it could have been a Sasquatch.
Yeah.
And I don't know which one it was, but it's definitely more fun to think that it was a Sasquatch.
Of course.
So that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Maybe it was.
It honestly could have been. Who knows?
What would you say is your life motto?
My life motto, in recent years for me has been, don't overthink things. Because for me, I find that in my life, I've really struggled to, like, for example, maybe like earlier one day, I was like, oh yeah, I said something to this one person that was supposed to be a joke, but I wasn't sure if it came off as funny as it was supposed to. Well, and that can keep kind of spiraling down into, oh, what if they thought I was being mean? What if they think I'm mean? I have no friends. It's just like goes into this ridiculous snowball effect when it's really like, in reality, they probably thought what you said was funny. And so I find that, I've really struggled with overthinking every little thing that happens to the point where it's actually caused some severe mental anguish. And it really, really has helped me because I struggle a little bit with social anxiety. It's really helped me in social situations to just be like, fuck it. Like, you're around these people because they like you. You don't need to think about every single thing you do, because like everybody says something at some point that they're like, oh, was that funny? Was that informative? Was it whatever? But yeah, I just don't overthink things anymore when it comes to that kind of stuff, and it really, really has helped me out.
Good for you, man. That's really good advice. And worst case scenario, you just ask the person, hey, that thing I said earlier.
Exactly.
You know, and most of the time, you know, well, I'm not gonna say most of the time, but a lot of the times when I have that kind of thought pattern going on in my head, you know, that person, like, what are you talking about? Oh, right. I think I kind of remember that, right? And it's this whole thing in your head, and that person is having a completely different experience, right?
Exactly.
Which again, why it can be really helpful to just ask questions. You know, honestly, that's one of my big things of late, as far as, you know, little bits of ways to live one's life for me. It just seems to be more and more lately about asking questions, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Making statements is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
I hesitate to even say that because it is a statement. Do you think statements are a dangerous thing? But yeah, you know, so much of the trouble that I've gotten into, even just this year, has been because I've said things that were ultimately statements that were underinformed statements, you know, and then that led to an argument. And then as soon as more information was disclosed, I was like, oh, okay. And you know, those statements, whether or not you say them out loud, we tend to make those statements in our head too, right? And that inner conversation then becomes potentially debilitating to any particular relationship. So yeah, asking questions, I think, is a really good way out of just about every jam.
It totally is. Yeah.
What advice would you give to those considering veganism?
I would say that I'd give two little bits of advice. One would be, if you're worried that it's like a huge thing, like you gotta be absolutely perfect, it totally isn't, because I think it's more about growth. Because obviously, like me, you know, I fucked up, and like, you know, you also might. It's like the trucks that transported the plants that you eat have probably hit an animal at some point, and you know, it's people hit animals themselves all the time with their cars, or you know, maybe you'll step on a bug, and you can't avoid every single thing, and so it's really not doing you any good to think of it as a daunting process of perfectionism. Whereas in reality, it's doing everything you can to prevent yourself from consuming animal products. And in the end, it ends up making a huge difference, whether it's perfect or not.
Yeah.
And then the other bit I would say to build on top of that is just send it. I mean, just go for it and see how you feel, because I guarantee you're going to feel way better physically and mentally. And eating will become a more enjoyable, wholesome experience for you. And I think that, you know, even if you don't have a I'm going to stick with this attitude, you're going to still stick with it.
Yeah. Once you give it a go and you realize that it's doable, and not only doable, but you feel better, then it's like, why wouldn't I keep doing this?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, there have been certain studies that have taken place where the participants were, you know, required to return to eating meat so that they could take their statistics and see what happens after they go back to eating meat. And they were just like, sorry, I'm not going to do that. I feel too good. And of course they ruined the test, right? But they, you know, they end up proving another point instead. It's really good advice, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like I should have some cool like sign off slogan like Rich Roll goes peace plants. I haven't thought of mine yet. Help me think of one real quick. The future is vegan. I don't know.
I like that one.
With that.
I mean, if there is going to be a future, then it's going to be vegan. Otherwise, I don't know if there will be one.
That's the whole point of that statement.
Absolutely. I like that one.
Cool.
Let's work towards a vegan future.
Let's definitely do that. Love you, bro.
All right. Love you too, bro.